YouTube got it. I think that we should be good on Rokfin though, because if it's only a couple seconds, Rokfin will refresh itself. Okay. So let's make sure we're still good on Rokfin. Okay, so looks like we're good on Rokfin. Cool. Make sure I like this video. Make sure I share this video. If you're on Rokfin, YouTube people, I'm trying. I really am. It looks like we're finally good on YouTube. Finally. Oh man, I got you out here hangling and dangling, man. What's going on?
It's all good. Hey, this is when you sometimes when you go to a restaurant, you have to wait a little bit before you get the food. You know. So
yeah.
Part of that.
All right, guys, what's going on? What's going on? Thank you all so much for tuning in to this live stream segment of MCSC. Of course, as always, I am your humble host, Niko House. Before we even get started, people, we're getting into the nitty of the grittiest. Let me just go ahead and spoiler alert. My man's Teddy got booted from YouTube completely, totally. Now, before we even get into the details of that, what we are going to do is remind YouTube that there are other ways for people to share their content. And so if you go look in the description right now, and I'm gonna post it into the chat. If you look into the description, you'll see a Rokfin link for Ghion journal. I'm gonna put it in the Rokfin chat also. Go follow Teddy right now on Rokfin. Before we do anything else, we got to make sure to take care of people who've been censored. You know, we just talked about this the other day. You know, because I did a video talking about how I was demonetized, how they're just keeping us in limbo. They've been censoring and demonetizing Teddy for forever. He's not the first. Damn sure not going to be the last. But like I said, one of the ways that we can make sure that our independent journalists are not stifled by these actions is to galvanize and support them in whatever way you can. By following them on the alternative platforms like Rokfin. Secondly, everybody, the moment is finally here. Rokfin, if you share a link outside of Rokfin, anybody can view the link even if they do not register, similar to YouTube. All you have to, they can watch it, but just like on YouTube, you can't like the video, comment, or watch premium content, obviously, unless you register. Just like YouTube, but you know, without the fascism. So you can share your links to Reddit like you do your YouTube links. You can share these links to Facebook and they will populate just like your YouTube links. You can share them on Twitter just like your YouTube. Anybody. So and what I'm telling you is stop fucking sharing those YouTube links because you be worried that people are not gonna get the Rokfin link and register. You ain't got to worry about that right now. We're just trying to make sure that people see the content. And that's what you can do now, even if you do not register to watch. So, which is dope. Ha! Oh man, Ghion General, thank you for the tip, bro. Appreciate you. Wish I knew that guy is. He has a really cool.
Hey, by the way, Niko.
Reed Barker, thank you very much for the tip. So now that we got that out the way, man, how you doing, Teddy? Man, what's going on?
What's up? Wait, quick point of correction. It's Ghion.
Ghion sounds better though.
Yeah, you got it right. Yeah. You know, you're half Ethiopian, bro. You should know these things.
No, I'm Barbadian. I ain't Ethiopian. It's your other black friends, Ethiopian.
Well, hey, if humanity was started in Ethiopia, we're all Ethiopian. That's my take on it. You know?
Okay, I guess.
Hey, you look Ethiopian. You look like Drake.
Bro, I get everybody on Drake's record. I get Drake, The Weeknd, Party Next Door. It just depends on how long my hair is at the time.
Yeah. But nah, thank you for having me on, Nick. I really I appreciate you. Appreciate the support too, man. Like I've been saying for a while, if independent media is going to make any type of inroads, we have to work collaboratively. We can't compete. The ones that can compete are billionaires, and even they don't compete. They work behind the scenes together. That's why they run the world, and they convince the rest of us to compete, and then we end up competing and dying. So if we could form a synergy where we actually collaborate and work as a cooperative team, man, we would be unstoppable. So I appreciate the fact that you not only believe in that creed, but you actually live it out as well, as evidenced by what you're doing right now. So I appreciate you.
Hey man, I appreciate you and everybody else who's willing to actually be brave, tell their truth, especially when it's based in facts. And if you've ever read Ghion Journal or watched any of Teddy's interviews or his videos, Teddy he just speaks facts, man. You know, he can you know put it on to get y'all to click on it like most of us creators do sometimes. But once you get into that article, once you get into that video, once you get into the teeth, you're once again looking at somebody who is one of the best at their craft, who only does not get the credit they deserve because he's not part of mainstream media and he's criticizing the establishment. And that can happen to anybody at any time. Even your favorite journalist who thinks that they toeing the line just enough, eventually they feel it too. Everybody does. So I remember just as an aside, TYT swore there wasn't any censorship, and then Facebook accidentally what happened was Anna went on to she was doing a show on what the fuck is that fake ass neo-progressive publication.
Neo-progressive? That's
it's a fake ass neo-progressive publication, and I wish I could remember what it's called. But luckily they fell out of favor with the left, so they don't get a lot of love anymore. But Anna was doing a show on them, and they were getting censored because they don't have the protection that TYT has, and it's a separate entity. So for the first time, she had to experience it firsthand, and she was actually towing the narrative, which made it even fucking more hilarious. I'm like, oh yeah, welcome to our world. It's crazy. It's almost like they blinded themselves to reality because they forgot they pay to protect themselves. But eventually it comes for you too.
Well, it's kind of like when, I don't know, there's certain people that deny certain types of injustices, and then it happens to them, and all of a sudden they're like, I can't believe this. But bro, you are just denying that for the past 10 years. Now all of a sudden you want to be a believer in this? I don't know. Sometimes it has to happen to you. I guess maybe that's part of human nature.
Yeah. We are limited by experiences. That's true.
Yeah.
Some people are just being, deceitful. And
TYT, they're malicious.
Exactly.
There's no other way to put it. I mean, they're getting paid the money that they're getting paid for a reason. They're propagandists.
So real quick, what was the topic that you were covering that led to you being ultimately removed? If I remember, you pulled a Niko Damas, and you actually posted something on Twitter saying like, I think this is probably gonna get me removed, but I don't really care.
It wasn't even that, right? I interviewed.
And it wasn't even that one.
No, it was the most. I don't know what's the. So I wrote an article this weekend about my experience on Saturday, right, where I ran into a homeless guy named Joseph in DC, and it was such a flashback because right before I became homeless and I was walking the streets of DC when I was trying to open up a business, I ran into a homeless guy named Joseph, right. And I wanted to just get money and walk away, but he wouldn't let me. I spent like 20 minutes talking to him. He told me all his stories about how everyone passed away in his family, and that's why he drinks all the time to numb the pain. I listened to him for like a good 15 minutes, and then finally I stepped in. I was like, to be honest with you, like I'm not trying to preach to you, bro, but there's two Josephs in the Bible. I told him about like Joseph in Genesis and Joseph in New Testament. And I was like, they both went through a lot of horrific stuff. They went through a lot of tribulation, but at the end they were blessed. And if you're going to honor your family, you can't do that by destroying yourself. You have to take care of yourself. So he cried and he hugged me, and I hugged him back. He was like, "You're my angel," right? And I remember that, like that whole. In fact, that was one of the first articles I wrote for the Ghion Journal. It was called "My Legacy, My Love." So when I ran into this homeless guy, and his name is Joseph as well, and he asked me to buy him a Pepsi. It was such a, I don't know, man. It was very emotional. And then that whole day, I detailed the whole thing. And I wrote an article where I said we had to become like RFK and Malcolm.
Wait a minute. You're telling me this is what got you kicked off of YouTube?
Yep. An article that barely touched the COVID-19 agenda or the vaccine agenda. I was talking about unity and love. And even within that article, I was saying, hey, even people that believe opposite of us, we have to really get to a point of compassion and not bash each other. And this is what I got. I finally got booted from YouTube.
So out of all the stuff you be posting, bro, I mean, and you go pretty deep sometimes, man. Out of all the shit you post,
right,
it was the unity and love post that got you kicked off of YouTube.
Fred Hampton, when he tried to unite people and say all about love, look what they did to him. So at least I didn't get the Fred Hampton treatment. So
hey, you got the digital version of it, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
That is, I mean, you're right though, right? The thing that scares them more than people being divisive, being inflammatory, even coming at the establishment, is unifying with other working class individuals, sympathizing and empathizing with those who are in, unfortunate situations, and then challenging the establishment together, looking past our differences, even if only temporarily, to take on the elite. That is the biggest fear of the establishment. And anyone calling for that with any type of voice, they're gonna find.
And to be honest with you, if you look at the underlying theme of my articles has always been about unity, love, getting over these imposed identities and manufactured ideologies, and really latching onto our common humanity. So up until, I said, I write about this a lot. It's not to weaponize the fact that I was homeless. It's just to give people a context as to why hardship sometimes is a good thing. Up until 2015, when I became homeless, obviously I'm not homeless anymore. So, and thank God for that. But up until then, I used to look at I was a hardcore, you interviewed me about this, Niko. I was a hardcore Democrat. I was plugged in to the Obama campaign big time. I did all kinds of stuff for that campaign. So I used to bash Republican voters. I used to call them stuff like Republican thugs and, just childish stuff. And I used to blame,
bro. That's pretty childish.
Hey man, sometimes look, we'll talk about that another time. I mean, I think when a lot of painful things happen in your life, sometimes it can stunt you, right? And so I look at this world through the idealism of I don't want to say a child, you know what I'm saying? But I look at things through the pure, through innocence, and how this world could be. And maybe that's part of the disconnect. And my idealism is what led to me being homeless, by the way, part of it. But when that happened, I used to blame, castigate white people as a whole for all the ills of this world. And then I was homeless for 2 years, and a vast majority of the people that were living in these shelters with me were quote unquote white. A lot of them, this was in South Carolina and in Colorado, kind of two reddish states. And a lot of them were Republican, but all these identities and ideologies went away. Everyone was just broken together. And so, for me, and one particular eye-opening moment was when I saw a 7-year-old white girl, and she was eating amongst the fellow homeless denizens. And I remember I looked up and I saw her name was Samantha or Sam, and I just started crying uncontrollably for 20 minutes. It's one thing. I have my soft spot is kids. You hurt kids, then I just, I feel compelled to protect kids at all times. So when I saw that, it broke my heart. It's one thing for adults, and I'm not justifying it, but it's one thing for adults to be to go through that type of tribulation. But as a child, and then she was white, so I was like, I can't sit up here. It was you know what it was? It was my Mecca moment. You know how Malcolm X went to Mecca and saw a sea of humanity praying together, and he came back. He's like, I can't vilify white people. They're not the problem. There's a bigger problem, and that's the system where a fraction of humanity, that's not. There might be the preponderance of or the majority of those people might be of one shade or another, but for the most part, it's the system, and it's the top of the system. The rest of us are being victimized, some lesser than others, but who cares? We're all being victimized, and so. And that's when I stopped looking at this world through the lens of identity, through the lens of ideology, and started really advocating for our common humanity. And that is at the foundation of everything even the articles I write about COVID-19 and the vaccine agenda. And still, at the end, you will find one nugget or two or many where I'll talk about the fact that there's a commonality of our pain. I interviewed Marcia Dyson one time, Michael Eric Dyson's wife. And it's something that she said that was so profound. She said, we have a commonality of pains as human beings. I was like, man, I still use that to this day, and I give her credit because she came up with it. And so we have a commonality of pains. And until we get to the point where we understand that we're all in this together, then we're going to keep fighting each other. We're going to keep bickering. And then, the rest, you'll see what's happening. And there's more to come, by the way.
So, hey, real quick, I want to make sure for everybody who just got here, Teddy's Rokfin page, Ghion Journal, is posted in the LinkedIn description for Rokfin and YouTube, and it's also posted in the chats as well. Make sure y'all go follow him. Teddy was kicked off of YouTube, and the video that was kicked off, that got him kicked off, was specifically about unity. And I can vouch for Teddy there. I mean, I would say the majority of our conversations in some way, form, or fashion has been about unity, you know? Trying to figure out, we've had a conversation about the best way, because, you know, obviously, you don't want unity mixed with too much naivete, like you don't want that, but there is a level of vulnerability, there's a level of understanding that you have to have, and humility, right? Like when you want to jump down somebody's throat, and instead of asking how they got there, you attack them. Is it really because you are trying to help them or help other people regarding that topic? Is it because of your ego, because of your brand, and what you know how people perceive you, because you wanted to one up that person, because you wanted to break that person down and prove you were smarter than them? Like, a lot of people engage disingenuously, and some people maybe start out genuine, and by the end of the conversation, just because there are a few points of disagreement, it becomes about proving yourself right, rather than even being open. You can disagree with somebody and be open to new information, because that happens all the time. So we talk about unity, and it's extremely important. And because we're talking about this topic of unity combined with obviously being booted, I just think it's really important to talk about, once again, just people migrating over to a place where unity is promoted, which is like one of the things I love about Rokfin. And one of the reasons, like, obviously, and it's funny because I actually talked to Teddy about getting on Rokfin before, but because like of just discombobulation, the craziness of the elections, it didn't happen. But luckily, he had just made contact, and YouTube shut him down almost immediately, which is weirdly coincidental, by the way.
I swear it's weird.
It's super weird, honestly. But you know, the universe works in strange ways, and the moment that YouTube shut him down, there was a backup available, and Rokfin was that backup. There's a level of, there are people on Rokfin that I thought I didn't even like. Now, I don't say I didn't like them. I just didn't think I would like them. Then I had a conversation with them because somebody else on Rokfin that I did like engaged with them in an honest conversation on Rokfin, a place where they wouldn't be ridiculed or attacked for being on the same camera together. And they're like, yo, man, he's dope as hell. I'm like, for real? They're like, oh, bro, y'all actually get along really well. Like, he's like, y'all disagree, but he will also listen to you. He's not going to attack you for your disagree. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I won't attack. And then we became friends. And then it rolls downhill from there. And now, so people on Rokfin are actually, they collab with each other more. And they don't have like this limited hangout of, I can only interview a leftist, or I can only interview a conservative. They watch each other's videos. They bring each other on. If they consider this person to be an expert in something, they don't judge them whether or not they're left or right. They bring them on and have the conversation and challenge where they can, let their audience challenge them. Most of the time, they usually agree on most of it anyway, because we're not talking about partisan politics. We're talking about the world and how it is and what we're all trying to get through. And so that's why, you know, me and my team have been promoting Rokfin from the beginning. When we first had that conversation with them, and they kind of had the similar goals as us, you know, I thought about people like you and others who eventually we knew were going to be hit by the YouTube algorithm, and there are not enough viable options out there. And I'm very thankful that we have one now.
Yeah. And, you know, like, man, life is so sublime, right? When something bad happens to you, you can be bitter or you can do better. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I'll give an example. Let's just say I was in a relationship in the past, and I thought she was the only one, and there's nobody else that could, that could do better. That was it. I was like, this is it. And if nothing else, then love doesn't exist, right? So consider that YouTube, right? Because that correlates. And by the way, that really did happen when I was younger.
It happened to everybody, Teddy. We all. My middle school girlfriend's gonna be the love of my life, and I was never gonna fall in love again. What you mean?
Yeah, right. But guess what though? Like now I'm married. Now I look back at myself like, what was I? Why did I always? I'm not trying to be vilify that person.
I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes things don't work out, but there's no need to sit up here and grieve over that. They just pick up and go. So it's the same thing with YouTube. YouTube was like this ex that dumped me. Now I'm over here with Rokfin. I'm like, who cares? And it just all boils down to, by the way, about how many people you have access to. The quantity doesn't matter, because I think the vast majority of people that are on YouTube are not really engaged. They're just surfing, you know.
That's a fact.
Huh?
That's a fact. No, that's a big issue on YouTube
Right.
because a lot
So,
of the views that you'll see for some of these people are bots, people
right.
who are just trying to figure out a quick. They're trying to figure out what the story is to talk about it. They're not trying to listen to the segment to learn
And then
from
to
it.
that point, would you rather, I don't know how many, what the user count for Rokfin is, but let's say 80% are fully engaged and are very astute and they know their stuff, right? Of let's say 2 million, I don't know what the actual
Mm-hmm.
numbers. And then you have a billion people, and 99.5% of them are just, I don't want to say useless, but they just don't care, right? So I'd rather have the people that are actually, I'm trying to reach the ones that want to have a conversation, that want to have in-depth discussion and look at this world through nuance. Quantity sucks in that way, because if all you're doing is chasing numbers, you're going to end up just with that, just numbers. There's nothing profound about it. So I'd rather have. I used to tell people back in the day, like Yeshua, renamed to Jesus, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeshua had 12 disciples, 12 followers, and Hitler had millions.
Yep.
Which one would you rather be, Hitler with millions of followers, or Yeshua with 12 followers? You know what
When
I'm
you
saying?
put it like that, I don't know, man. I'm still trying to mull it over.
That's not a follower.
That's not a follower though. That's a lot of them. Fuck, a lot of the millions of people were kind of coerced at a certain point. I'm pretty sure they would have went with Yeshua. But but that's actually a very good point that you bring up though, because the ones who tell the truth from the beginning usually start out with 12 and end with millions. But the
Right.
ones who will lie and deceive will start out with millions and end up with 12 or dead.
That's deep right there. Yo,
So
so look at what's happening right now with this whole vaccine agenda, right? You have, I think Fauci's approval rating, according to CNN, Criminal News Network, they're saying it's 70%, right? Which coincidentally, that was the percentage of people that supported the Iraq War in the beginning,
mhm.
right? Now, if you do a poll, how many people support the Iraq War now? That number can't be higher than 10, 15%.
if,
If not more
if
than that.
and that's because of the margin of error.
Right. Yeah. And there's some people that just love war. So, and cognitive dissonance is a bitch. And once they make up their mind, there's nothing that could change their mind. And so you're always going to have that percentage of people that are just stuck on whatever they want to believe. But most people, they evolve. And so what's popular today, when you look back, you're like, well, how? And so the same thing with the vaccine agenda. You have Fauci, who's a criminal. What he's done is not a hyperbolic. He came out in 1983 and said that AIDS was an airborne pathogen. It was a lie.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And that's why people that in the gay community that have the people that have AIDS, they hate him for that, because he turned it as a disease into like some 21st century form of leprosy, right? Because people are afraid that they're going to contract it by virtue of just being standing next to him. He did that. Like, does anybody fear lupus?
Yeah, it further entrenched people into the anti-LGBTQ stigmas too.
Yeah, of course, exactly. So Fauci, more than anybody else, did that. And then shortly thereafter, he promoted AZT as a drug, as a wonder drug for AIDS. That didn't end up very well. In 1993, Fauci funded a research on foster children in New York that had HIV, where they were given experimental medication. This is the stuff of Mengele. This man keeps surviving one criminal thing after another. In 2009, he used the H1N1 quote-unquote pandemic to say that everyone needs to be vaccinated. 80 million people got vaccinated. 47 people died, and they pulled the vaccine. And now this. And before him, the CDC in 76, swine flu. They said, everyone needs to get vaccinated. 400 people developed Ghion syndrome. They pull it. And it's the same now. People are not, forget 47 people dying. There's over 9,000 that's been documented according to VAERS. 400 people have not developed Guillain-Barré. And yet they don't. At what point, when do we stop and say, hold on, this might not be safe. This might not be effective. But they're not going to. There's an agenda beyond money. This is not about money anymore. There's something else at play, There's a collective psychosis that's hitting most people, and the ones that are really rational, but yet nefarious, They are pushing this. There's an agenda to what they're doing, and unfortunately, this is why for me I advocate unity. I've been saying for a very long time that if we don't unite as a people, we are going to die. We're going to perish. And again, not hyperbole. When in my native land, Ethiopia, is currently dying. The people are fighting based on tribe, and there's 200, 300, 400 people dying every day for killing each other for nothing. And this whole tribalism thing was foisted upon us by outsiders. So when people divide you, and this is why for me I cannot stand identity politics anymore. They take the pains of the oppressed and weaponize it to fracture society, and to make people on the other side, quote unquote other side, defensive. So they're doing that to us. They're doing that to, I don't know. I don't even want to say us and them, but they're doing that to everybody.
They do it to. They have very specific groups and very specific ways that they do that, right? Where you get Black women's plight, for example, this election in particular, I would say maybe even over the last 2 or 3 years, has been highlighted all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden,
right,
no one cares. And you saw a lot of white women who constantly engaged in third wave feminism, where basically that's all they care about is actually uplifting white women. They were smearing people, attacking people, protect black women, and like, mind you, by the way, Black women and women of color are the number one trafficked group in the world by far. When they disappear, they don't make the news. And I mean, that's just how it is. And I mean, there's a saying in New York: if a white girl disappears from Manhattan or Long Island, then like the entire city is looking for her. But if a brown girl or a Black girl disappears from the Bronx because she ran away, and that's what they'll say. And that's generally how they treat. I mean, that's how it goes, man. And and we know that this is the case, but no one highlights it. We know how like obviously when during the crack epidemic, that was a sickness, that was an addiction. It should have been treated as such. But with the opioid epidemic, it's being treated as an addiction. Like the halfway house industry in Boca Raton is booming, because you get to send your kid to a halfway house, they get caught doing, Percocet, doing Xanax on the job, get into an accident like a DWI. But your kid got caught smoking crack, they might get 25 to life. So people weaponize the plight of women, men in very unique ways, different groups, different ethnicities. And you got to start asking, where have they been at? And what are their plans? And if they don't present viable answers to both of those questions, like, where you been? Oh, I've been here. Here's my credentials. And then this is what my ultimate goal is. And this is also how I plan on holding people accountable who don't pursue that goal. If they don't provide you both of those things, then you just need to assume they're trying to divide. Right.
No, but let me tell you. So there's two types of messaging that I do, right? One is for everyday man. People like me, you, just the everyday person that not sitting at the policy table. My messages to us, we the people, let's call them, is different. Now, there's times where I kind of fall short. Like this morning, I got into a heated debate with somebody about the vaccines, for example, and they just reverted to ad hominem, right? And I don't know what else to call it. I got triggered, and so I posted. I took a picture of Fauci with a red Kool-Aid, the Kool-Aid icon, the smiley face thing. You know what I'm talking about? And then put a needle inside there, and I said, Fauci, people that like to say that everyone that's been jabbed is a cultist, that's just out of bounds. But sometimes I as much as I preach about being compassionate to one another and not reverting to ad hominem, sometimes when people come at me with ad hominem, I do the same thing back. So I'm trying to work on that. But outside of that, what my objective when I talk about these things with people is to present issues that are legitimate. Racism is legitimate, but to present it in a way where they don't feel defensive. You're right?
Yes.
Where they don't feel like they're being lectured to or being blamed, because they shouldn't be blamed. The system of racism is a lot more. I don't know. It's a lot more complicated than what we're led to believe. Somebody once said, which I believe, by the way, That racism was when you combine bias with power, right? So, for example, if I'm like in Minnesota, I mean Mississippi somewhere, and some gas station attendant calls me the N word, that to me that's not racism. He's a bigot, but it's not racism because he has no impact on my life. In fact, I'll probably call him the N word back and leave, or just ignore him. And he
Well, it
doesn't.
could be racism because if you respond back to him in any way, then the cops come, they're gonna arrest
That's
you.
it. See, I'm getting to that. Right. That's the difference, right? So now, if I go to if a cop pulls me over, for example, and he calls me the N word, and then ends up locking me up, that's racism because he has the direct impact on my life. He has the power over me.
So here's what I'm gonna push back. I want to push back a little bit because this is actually a good conversation, but I want to push back. I want to know what your response is to this. So my thing is the if that guy in Alabama boldly calls you the N word at a gas station, he knows he can get away with it because that same cop that you just said will pull you over is likely who's gonna pull up, and he's taking advantage of a system that benefits him and protects him and all his vitriol. So wouldn't that still be under the category of racism just by that It's like when that girl at the park pretended to be in trouble when that black guy was like, "You're not supposed to be walking your dog here," and she started because she knew inherently the cops pull up, they're probably gonna kill him and she was trying to teach him a lesson.
So that's what I mean, though. So even the powerless could have power. Then if they're going to leverage, like they call the police a lie and say that I was doing something I wasn't, and they believe in by virtue of my complexion. At that point, that person actually has power too, because if you're able, but if that person just calls me an N-word, he doesn't do anything else, and he doesn't have the cunningness in him to do something like that, right? Then that's bias. But even people that are necessary, like the everyday Joes and everyday Janes, can still have power if they.
But he doesn't see. My thing is, he doesn't have to say like call you the N word and do something about it immediately. But like you're operating from the framework of like you being in that situation, you having self discipline, you having empathy and understanding, and also just being like, I'm not about it. This is not worth it. Not everybody has that, and so being willing to purposely provoke people into making a bad decision in that circumstance because you know you can get away with it because the system is protecting you, I feel like that's still a form of racism. It just didn't appear to be racism in your circumstance because you were able to just walk away and it's fine. But in his mind, he knew he could do that. And if you did retaliate, he already knew what was coming next. And just that awareness of how the system benefits them and them taking advantage of it to insult you and demean you, like that is, in my opinion, still taking advantage of the power structure that's protecting them.
So, like I said, it's complex, right? That's what, but I think people that do that are in the minority. They're not in the majority, right? People that act with that type of malice, I don't think that, I think just based on my own experiences, I think the vast majority of every organization, every group, and every race or identity are good folks. You always have assholes. Like, for example, I used to bash cops. I used to criticize them until one in particular saved my life in 2015. And Niko, I'm going to talk to you about that, by the way. A discussion to be had. But from that moment on, once a cop saved my life, like to that point, I started seeing them differently. And then I would approach them and talk to them. And I have yet to meet one cop that was an asshole since when I go to them and have a conversation with them, including an officer I just had a conversation with 4 days ago named Officer Mark from Fairfax PD. They're everyday folks. Now, does that mean that they're, as a whole, there are some racist cops? And in fact, I interviewed one, Officer Weir, he wasn't a racist. He was a cop, and one of the things I asked him is, hey, do you acknowledge that you do have problems with some cops within your unit? He was like, of course we do. But then he went on to explain to me, like, the problem is there's a level of fraternity that we have. And so by default, we kind of try to protect one another.
By default, ain't no by default. It's because the ones that you've seen what happens when you see that's my issue, right? So one of the things that makes you brilliant and I feel like helps you grow is you really internalize your experiences and you try to base however you move in the future off of that. One of the things that makes me an asshole is my logic and not, I'm not, and it's like I have it's almost like a default. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm an empath, but I can separate and detach from my experience and acknowledge the reality of the totality, but also say like, okay, this is my experience, but let me measure the circumstances surrounding that. So if I'm walking up to a cop and I'm having a good conversation with him, he has no reason to treat me like shit, because it would look really bad on his part, and it's not a situation where he is attempting to exercise power or influence over me. He can get nothing out of that interaction if he treats me negatively, and therefore it's going to change the way he addresses me. But if the situation will reverse and he has a goal, meet the quota, now that goal is driving every action that comes next. And the institution itself is poison. Like, I mean, we can't say that the institution of our government, our federal government, and our state governments are poison. And they're funded. The cops are funded by these people, and we know how they're trained or lack thereof. We know how these police chiefs move. We know how the AGs, the U.S. attorneys and the DAs protect them. And if you are a cop allowing that to happen, then you are not a good cop. And if you are a good cop and you do call people out, you're either dead or fired. Not saying that because I had a cop that straight up told me, he's a black cop, whenever I was kidnapped in the hospital by Miami PD. So he's like, hey, nah, you need to here's his badge number. Here, you need to go, like, tell the judge what happened and try to get your paperwork. Because you were kidnapped, man. Straight up. And he's like, and the cops here do that. So, like, he's a good cop, right? He told me what to do. It was kind of in a way where he couldn't necessarily be, accused of anything, because I could have got his badge number from anywhere. So, but like, that is so rare. I mean, we know I'm sure there's a great staffer somewhere in DC just trying to, working their hardest on the single payer healthcare policy right now. Okay, it's one. That's one. The system. So in that such scenario, I would say it's like because I agree with your point. We do have to take people at an individual level when they're engaging as people or humans, as equals. But we also have to keep in context that there is a power structure that some people have ingratiated themselves with, and we have to kind of detach ourselves from our personal experiences. Because that's what happens with white people, right? They see one thing in the way that they've been treated this entire time, and they can't believe anyone else can be treated any differently. Because why would they be? Because racism isn't a thing. You don't see race. Remember, I'm blind. I don't see race.
So let me tell you. Again, I think my experience kind of either informed me or misinformed me. I like to go with the former, right? And that I think the vast majority of white people, for example, I hate these labels, by the way. I keep saying.
I mean, they are white.
Okay. Because there's nobody white and there's nobody black. It's just nonsense.
I mean, there's some people who are red too.
No,
I'm just saying, like, we know it. We know. I mean, we got to be able to identify people too, because at this point, it's really important to. You don't want to. I feel like you don't want to politicize identity. You don't want to weaponize it in a way that's disingenuous. But we have to be very, very specific. We have so much double speak going on right now in the world, and with the way people we have to be able to carefully identify people. And at the end of the day, we identify people by the visceral reaction to that we've been conditioned to have. Right. And that's for protection. That's a defense mechanism. It's instinct. It's for academics. It's to have these conversations. And that's why I feel like it's important. I agree with you. I hate the labels. I don't.
By the way, for the record, I'm able to say these things because I tread very carefully about lecturing anybody about these things.
He's lying. He is lying his motherfucking ass off, y'all. That motherfucker will lecture y'all for 2 hours straight.
No, seriously. So I'm originally from Ethiopia, right? So I could trace my ancestry and say, this is where I belong. This is where I come from, right? So when I go up to quote unquote black folks and say, hey, stop using that label black because that was imposed upon our people. That's not even our word. And it was meant to dehumanize us. Then what are they supposed to say? I can say I'm Ethiopian. What are you supposed, like, you could say you're from Barbados. What are they supposed, so it was very painful. And so I try not to be in lecture mode and to be more.
But also, what does being Barbadian mean, right? Because they're Desi, like that. They're mostly of Desi descent, Barbadian, like in Trinidad, right? You can be from Pakistan or India a lot of the time, or China. Right, still be from. I mean, my friend's mom is full ass Chinese and has a whole ass Trini accent. So like, it's like and I think people are beginning to actually understand now, especially as we look at what's happening in AFRICOM, right? Like in Africa with AFRICOM, they're ramping that shit up, bro. And it's like in a crazy way. And people don't know. Why don't people know? Because people don't care. Why don't people care? We know why. It's the same reason they don't care about how many people got killed in Afghanistan. The same reason they don't care or acknowledge the fact that the embargo was only put on Cuba largely because it was desegregated and then there were a bunch of black people and brown people in power. That was the problem. Why Venezuela, mostly indigenous, mestizo, and black, why they're being sanctioned into oblivion. Same thing with Bolivia. Mostly indigenous people wanted Evo Morales, and they were the ones who also decided the parties and the people who represent those parties. And that's why the government looked the way it did, and that was problematic. Because people look out for their own just based off of proximity.
So can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
On your show, let me interview now. No.
People do it all the time.
I think you believe this, that humanity will get to a place of a shift of consciousness, right?
Yeah, I feel like we're already on the way there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when and if that shift happens, do you think it will necessitate us to look beyond identities and look at a common identity, which is humanity? Like the fact that we're all human beings, we all suffer, we all go through a lot of challenges, we all try to do better, we all hope for better. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that
why not? Why can't it be both? So, because my thing is, although that is a welcomed point of view, you want people to behave like that, like we're all humans. Like, but the issue is when you just erase people's identities. There's like so identity can be used to divide, but identity can also be used to teach, right? Identity can also be used to influence. It can create culture. It can create language. It can create dialects. And what we don't want to do is trivialize identity either.
Right.
Like, so, I love the fact that, I mean, even though it gets me in trouble sometimes because we bump heads, but I love the fact that I act like my mom. Like, I also kind of like appreciate, even though it sucks, but like because of just Barbadian culture, my mom and like me and my brother and my cousins were kind of like detached from the diaspora culture, which is in a very unique way. So that's unique to Barbados. That's for a reason I want to get into, but at least the Barbadians that moved to New York. But that allowed me to be my own person, but that's directly because of and so people are like, oh, well, aren't you upset because you don't have your identity? Like, no, I have my own identity. And I have other factors that influenced my identity because I wasn't attached to this is me, this is my flag, this is what I'm carrying all the time, this is what I'm gonna act like, this is what I'm gonna eat, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe if I'm like obsessed with my Barbadian or my French identity or my Blackfoot identity, then that's all I focus on, and I'm too scared or too uncomfortable to venture out anywhere else. But because I didn't have one to fall back on, like most of the country does, that's how I go to Korean church for 10 years and learn how to read and write Korean, right? And made great friends and all that good stuff because of it. That's how I learned how to speak Portuguese. That's how I was more comfortable engaging with the Puerto Ricans in my family because that side of the family did have a little bit more of an identity, but I was able to, but they appreciated mine or lack thereof, and I appreciated theirs. And so if we just treat it, we're all humans and we're all kind of like the same. We're not the same. We're just not.
Let me clarify that then, if that's the case. I'm not. When I say unity, that's not the same thing as conformity, right?
But it can be that if you don't have both, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm trying to say. So I want us to maintain our unique traits and even the cultures that we have, right? So I'm proud of the fact that I'm Ethiopian. I also identify as African American because I grew up here for 30, not going on 39 years of my life. It was in America, and the vast majority of that, I'm in an African American fraternity called Omega Psi. Well, Omega Psi Phi.
All that you'll hear all that shit he talking about. We gotta start seeing each other as humans, and he in a damn fraternity.
Yeah, I know.
African American fraternity, exclusive. You gonna segregate yourself?
Did you just hear me pause and I said I was, and I said
he was.
Story.
Hey, but he was there though. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a long story. I love my friends that I've built up, but as a person of faith, you can't serve God and mammon at the same time. You can't serve masonry and God at the same time. I'll just put it that way.
Man, now see, we have another disagreement. You can't serve man and God at the same time, as long as you're serving it in
No,
the
not
name.
man. Masonry or mammon, the devil.
Oh, you mean like the Masons? Understood. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then
That's
different.
That's different.
All these fraternities and sororities are the foundation is masonry. Anyways, I didn't know about that when I signed up. But anyway, that's another story for another time. So the way I see it is like, imagine humanity, like my siblings and I. That's a microcosm of humanity. We all have our different first names. We all have our different, unique characters and characteristics about us, right?
Yeah.
But at the core, our last name is what unites us, right? So in that same way, whether you're Chinese, Vietnamese, Peruvian, Ethiopian, Barbadian, African American, whatever, all these things are first names. But the last name that we have in common is humanity. And if we forget about the common humanity, then everything else goes by the wayside. And so, yeah, I advocate that we retain our uniqueness, that we celebrate what makes us different. Diversity is beautiful. Not diversity like the top.
So I hear what you're saying, but I think that you might be misconstruing what I'm saying. I get what you're saying as far as like we as individuals like maintain our. What I'm saying is we actually need people who are not us that we are interacting with to acknowledge our identity, but also acknowledge that is a subplot in a grander story of who we are as people and why we should help people, right? So it's like acknowledge our identity if you're trying to learn, if you're trying to grow, if you're trying to experience and appreciate those experiences.
Who needs to acknowledge our identity?
Say what?
What do you mean by who needs to acknowledge our identity? Who?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying people in general. Like,
gotcha.
Not only do I need to acknowledge that you are black, but I need to be conscious that you are Ethiopian when I'm talking to you. If you tell me that and you take the time to sit down and put the emotional energy and labor into making it a point to tell me that, it's because it's important to you. So as a human who cares about what is important to other humans, I am going to acknowledge that because that's what I would expect from me. You get what I'm saying? So it's understanding that like we could don't use identity to separate, to divide, to remove yourself, to give yourself an excuse not to interact. You can use it. We should still use identity, however, to appreciate, to learn, to experience, to grow. And most importantly, once again, if something is important enough to another human being that it defines them, then that it should be important to you too.
So I will take this as every day I try to learn one thing. So I've been saying there's one particular lady, I'm not going to say her name, but she get like every time I would use quote marks in my articles around black, right? She would say, stop. I need you to stop. You're getting a following. Stop doing this. You're stripping me of my identity. And I'm like, what? I don't get that. You understand where I'm coming from. This is what I believe. Well, why are you trying to impose your views on me? But now I'm like, okay, even though I don't like it, does not mean when somebody else says that they are that, then I cannot be arrogant enough to say, I'm going to impose my views on you, because that's imposition too. If I believe that the label black is an imposition, I can't impose upon you to take it away from you. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we have to approach these things. You're right. I hear you. Hey,
I get what you're saying though, because you're speaking in a sense of people who are weaponizing identity in a negative way.
Right.
And you're like, is there going to be a point where we get past that?
Right.
And I think that there could be, but unfortunately, the way the world works is, without due influence, but if you just let it go, then people, that's how you end up with that whole phrase. Oh, I don't see color, and that was okay for a long time. It's like, no, I'm gonna need you to see color because I'm still black. Like all that shit that I went through didn't disappear because you decided not to see color.
Hey, for the record, I talk about the need to get to the post-race and all that. I acknowledge that racism exists, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a I'm not a Candace Owens a Republican or whatever.
Well, no, also because you're talking about, but that's the difference between you and Candace Owens, right? You're speaking about unity when you're speaking about racism. You're like, why are these people only focus on racism? Because the black people do this, and this. Maybe I should focus on that. Like that's what Candace Owens does. That's what a lot of the black and the minorities do on. Like that's not what you're doing. So there's a clear difference.
Right. Because what she's doing is basically
I'm just being an asshole and just having a super nuanced conversation to entertain people. Cause I know exactly what you mean. I'm sure they do too. But like this is more fun for everybody involved. So that's why.
So let me tell you the difference between Candace Owens and me, right? Candace Owens is the right's Joanne Reed, right? That is not a compliment.
Damn, bro. I'm not sure who's more insulted Joanne or fucking Candace at that point. Oh, damn. Damn.
Or she's the right's Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? I mean, I just don't respect these people because I just don't, because they take, again, legitimate grievances that people have, legitimate pains that people have, and they monetize it. They're demagogues. And they have no intention of healing the foundation of it, which is the structural racism, the systemic racism that does exist in America. What they do is they leverage it for their own benefit, and they sell books. They're promoted by mainstream media, and then what's even worse is that they turn around and induce strife in society, right? And they pit one against the other. So Candace Owens, I tweeted her the other day, and I said, hey, listen, because this issue of the vaccine is so big that I'm willing to put aside my criticism of you, because at least you're talking the right language when it comes to this particular issue.
Oh, man, that was super weird. That was super weird. Like, why is insulin so expensive then? I'm like scrolling through the thread to make sure that there was no caveat. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so like, no, there's no way she just got this right, full stop. There's no way. There's no way.
I was shocked.
And I was expecting and we need to make sure, but we still need to, you know, we can't socialize doctors' pay. And I was waiting for all that. And it was like, nope. She just wants cheaper medicine for everybody.
I would give credit, you know, when she does that. But
that was a Trump. You know why? Because that was one of Trump's policies. So it's okay.
Exactly. Anyways, I don't respect. So that's what she does. I wrote an article called "How to Be a Filthy Rich Black Intellectual," and it's very easy. You either become a coon of the left or a coon of the right, and you don't. There's no such thing as nuance. There's no need. They don't talk about the actual problem of what's causing this. They point fingers at the other side's base that is struggling as well. You see what I'm saying? And so it's this divide and conquer thing. That I know this because I'm from Ethiopia, and I began to saw the beginnings of this in the 1990s when I was in college. Right? I know I'm an old man, but I also focused. I wrote a lot back.
I was in elementary school in the 90s. Just let everybody know.
You were what?
It's totally irrelevant, but I was in elementary school. Like, I'm not trying to say you're old. I'm just saying I am still young. Is all I need people to.
I'm young at heart, so that's it.
No, you still look young though, so that's good.
I don't look it, so I'm good. I'll take it.
I mean, you got the gray in the beard, man. That's because black dudes finally decided to stop dyeing their damn beard. Like, bro, you start graying your beard at like 28 if you have a beard. Like, for those of you who don't know, all the women, I'm about to leak the men's secret. We all got gray in our beards unless you dye it. Like, literally, as soon as you turn 28, 29.
You know why? Somebody told me something that's kind of insightful. They said it's because we put cologne. I was like,
because of what?
We put cologne. I put cologne like here.
I actually don't do that. I actually do it at the top of my head now.
Well, that's maybe
I've had gray since. No, I've had gray since I was 7.
Really?
In my hair.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I thought my beard by now was actually gonna be completely gray, but I just have a streak. Just have a random streak. I'm out here looking like Rogue from X-Men for some reason. But it also might be because I don't cut it often, so that could be it.
But hold on, I wanted to say something, but I just lost my train of thought for a second. Oh, Candace Owens, right? So I don't know. Actually, the thought just escaped. Let's move on.
He don't like Candace Owens. She uses her race to weaponize and divide. And
no, that's what I was gonna say though. The fact that she did that and she didn't pivot to then defend Trump. They do this. I don't think they even like Trump, to be honest with you. They know that this is a cash cow for them.
Man, there were some people who I can tell you, I know for a fact, there were some people who genuinely liked Trump, but it's because they knew him behind the scenes, and he treated them with respect, you know. And
no, I'm not. You talking the pundits? These I don't call them elite, debased.
I've talked to enough people out there at these events, and they will tell me. See, here's how I know they actually like him. because they actually tell me their criticisms of him.
Who's they? Are you talking about these like establishment figures? Or
no, I'm talking. Well, sometimes I'm not talking about establishment figures exclusively, but it's more so the people who like. I know that there are people, average people, populist conservatives, and establishment. Mostly not establishment, but mostly the former. Like they do like him because they've seen him interact in a place where he's not on high alert, right? He's not talking to protect himself. He's talking just to converse. So the way, so it's, which is I guess a thing, right? Because like if people who know Hillary or like Obama or Hillary in person, they don't fucking like them, but they present as if everybody likes them.
So let me tell you, I've never met Obama in person, but there was a time when I was like really, I don't say enamored. That sounds a little bit too much.
Man, but you were enamored. I know, because almost every black person was. So,
but
being honest, guys.
What happens is my idolizing him, right, made me filter out everything else that was bad about him, right? Mm-hmm. So in that way, when you elevate somebody to a level of an idol, then you rationalize everything. You forget about everything else that they're saying that might be heinous, and you focus only on the good. And so that's the problem of elevating people to that level. Like you can't even look at them with a critical eye. All you could do is worship and salivate at their every word. So Trump supporters do that. Obama supporters. I used to do that. Hillary supporters to this day. I think the people that are the most rabid are Hillary supporters, like by far. It's not even close. I mean, it's just, oh my God.
Yeah. You wouldn't be that far off there. All right, real quick, man. Before we get up out of here, let everybody know where they can find you at. I'm gonna tell you right now. I can tell you the first place you can find. Go find them on Rokfin. The link is in the description. Yeah. Go find.
By the way, good thing, Niko. It took me 5-6 years when we started the Ghion Journal, and then the Ghion Journal channel on YouTube. It was about 5 years ago. Let's call it 5 years. It took me 5 years to amass 1,800 followers before I was unceremoniously dumped and deleted from YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. I started the Rokfin channel, I think 5 days ago. We already had 100 something.
After that, had to be.
Was it?
I mean, yeah, because we talked on like a Tuesday or Wednesday.
So maybe it was Monday, maybe.
It was, because you basically texted me, let me know today. So yeah, it hadn't been long, bro. It hadn't been long.
Yeah. So let's call it 3 days. It's been 3 days, and I'm already 10% of the way there. There's 174 followers already. So the thing that I appreciate about Rokfin is that, look, Niko and I could sit down next to Jake Tapper, and I won't embarrass him if given the chance. If there's really a neutral playing field to exchange ideas and to talk and to debate out the issues, I would eat his lunch and then take his kids' lunch. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like I would take the next 5 generations' lunch. And I don't say that to be arrogant, although that does sound arrogant. It's just that when you get to that level of indoctrination, there's nothing original. They're just reading screens.
Yep.
And they're just echoing whatever. They're just parroting whatever. So when you actually pull on one thread, I've interviewed or debated countless doctors that support the vaccine, and at each turn, I reduced them to shambles by just pulling on one little thread. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's why they deleted me from YouTube, because they don't want that type of information to go out. So now when you're given a platform where everyone has the ability to express their idea, and then they let the marketplace of ideas determine who wins and who loses, we will win. We will win.
That's facts.
So I'm just blessed to be on this new channel. I'm going to be a lot more engaged. In fact, I'm going to do a broadcast tonight about this topic. A live broadcast. I'm going to try for the first time. So yeah, if you can find me at rokfin.com/Ghion, Ghion, and then journal, like the stuff that you write on. You can also find me at the Ghion Journal.
First of all, we don't write in journals no more. It's 2021. We don't write in journals. We write our notes on our iPhones.
No, when I was a kid, right, I have a hard time saying the letter
R.
R.
First of all, I ain't that damn young. I had a journal before, okay? No, back in my day.
You have an iPad.
Back in my day.
When I was your age, a Paramego cost $1 or something like that. Anyways, but now you can also find me at the GhionJournal.com. That's GHION journal.com. Find me on Twitter, Tildros. You see the spelling, and then _ F as in Frank, IKRE. And then on Twitter as well, Ghion Journal, just one word. And that's it. Hey, Niko, I'm a big fan of yours, man. Yo, we've been at this for almost 2 years now. Like, when I first met you. And what I appreciate about you, man, seriously, again, this might sound arrogant. We could talk, and there's never a time where I'm like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like that level of engagement where for me, I can determine whether or not somebody knows their shit within 10 seconds. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And the fact that you're able to speak intelligently about almost any topic, right? Some people are very, and like I said, I know it's kind of bordering on arrogance. I hope that's not how it comes across. But some people are very good at one thing, and I admire that.
That's not arrogant. That's actually how our educational system is set up. Like the higher you go in degrees, the dumber you get, because you have to focus more and more and more. That's all you have time to focus on. You have to focus on getting your doctoral thesis done. That's what you're focused on. Yeah. About that one topic. Like, you don't become smarter and everything else by focusing on one topic, guys. I'm just letting you know.
No, you're right. By the way, when I got my MBA, I was indoctrinated. I was taught to value profits as God, to focus on return on investment at all costs. And it wasn't until I went through 2 years of homelessness, I was like, hold on, this is not right. And I started being anti-corporation as a consequence of that. So, yeah, you're right about that. But, yeah, there's some people that are very good at one thing, but then there are some people that are jacks of all trade and masters of a lot. And so that's what I consider to be, Niko, and I appreciate you.
Oh, man, I appreciate that, man. I'm just, I'm a Capricorn, so we just don't engage in conversations we don't know nothing about, because I'm not just about to sound stupid just because. That's just what we're very careful. We're very careful about how we go about our business. Look, if I start a debate with somebody, it's because I know I won the debate already. I'm not gonna lie to people. That's just how but obviously I like to talk a lot too. So, and I don't like to look stupid either. And I don't like to be a fly on the wall. So there's a certain responsibility of, well, bro, you just gotta learn a lot about a lot of shit. And I do, and I care about this stuff too. Like, that's like the most important thing. So when I'm debating somebody, I'm hoping that people who are watching are learning something.
Right.
Not only the information itself, but how to properly engage people who disagree with you on a specific topic, and making sure that you're prepared for what comes your way. Because like if I'm debating somebody on camera, for example, there's a lot of people who probably agree with me. If they're watching it from my channel, for example, they already agree with me most likely. But knowing why they agree with me is more important than agreeing with me.
Right.
Or figuring out that they may not be agreeing with me, right? And then being able to hear the other side's argument, like, oh, okay, I'm all about like people objectively observing discourse, and then doing my part to make sure that they're getting the most out of it. Because obviously not everybody's gonna do that, but that's just something that's very important to me, because that's why I do what I do anyway. It's to help people figure this shit out.
Now, again, that's how you advance as society, man. It's not to censor people like YouTube. It's to encourage conversations. That's how we learn. If we start all thinking the same way, then that's inertia, and then eventually death. So here's to folks that question. I wrote something earlier, and I said, this is a big shout out to all the kids. No, all the kids, let me know if this sounds familiar. If you're a child and used to get in trouble for questioning, while all the other kids used to just religiously just accept everything the teacher said, and you got in trouble for questioning, guess what? Nothing's changed, right? Nothing's changed. It's still, people that question still get vilified. They try to whip us back into line, because they see that they see us as a threat. And it goes back to even survival. Back in the day, when if you walk out of line, if you're not in the community, you will be eaten by a lion. And so human beings learned to be conformists a long time ago. But yet some of us said, no, why? Like that question, why?
Yep.
This, why?
And not for nothing, but us cool kids on the spectrum over here, we figured it out quicker than everybody else, because being autistic actually sometimes is Very, very helpful.
You said you're on this.
Yeah, I'm on Asperger's. I have Asperger's, man. That's what I was told.
Really?
And I mean, it's definitely made sense after actually I went back and like re-examined my life. I was like, well, that explains a lot, a whole lot. Yeah, I'm like, I used to ask questions, and like if it didn't flow logically, it would be a problem. Like it was a legitimate issue where I'm getting in arguments with my mom, like, no, because you said this yesterday. And I would map it out, and I'm like, and now you're saying this because it's concerning my brother. And you're just like, well, you should just like accept it. And then I'm like, well, no. Because now you gotta explain to me why I should accept this and why he shouldn't. And it should just be because we're a year and a half apart and I'm older. That's not acceptable. Like this was a thing. This is the whole ass. So when my teachers would do, like when they would engage in some bullshit, I wouldn't let it slide either. Now, obviously, as I got older, I learned the time and the place, But it's just one of those things where I knew I was like very, very neurotic and cerebral when I was a kid, and I thought that was normal for most kids. Right. Yeah. So, but that's why the ridiculous obsession with logic, man.
Hey, but you know what? That's all good. I think every burden is a gift, and so every burden is a blessing eventually. What you thought was a problem is actually becomes part of your purpose, so it's all good.
Thanks.
But yeah, Niko,
so somebody said, hold on, we need critical thinking. You said, Rokfin, you're required to register to view content. That's not true. That has changed. That rule has changed. It's not the case anymore. They just changed it a couple of days ago, where as long as you click on the link, you can't comment or like on YouTube. You have to register to do that. But as long as you click on that link, you can watch content as long as it's listed as free content without registering. So just clarify that. And by the way, really quick before we get up out of here, I'm not doing my 5 p.m. show today, my 5 p.m. Rokfin premium show, because we had to move an interview around and I had to do Teddy. So tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, I will be doing my Rokfin premium show, and it is going to be lit. I'm just letting y'all know. It's going to be lit. You need to be there. Go follow me on Rokfin right now. Go do it. Go follow Teddy while you over there too. I hope he should have 100 new followers by now.
Yo, I'm up to 174, so.
I don't know where you were at before that, but
no.
Sounds good. All right. So go follow me on Rokfin, people. Thank you very much for tuning. Thank you very much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you share it, but of course, more than anything else, always remember, find your balance.